Marketing Director for the city, and I welcome everybody for coming. We have a good turnout. Some quick introductions, and I'm not going to introduce everybody on staff, but first of all, Councilmember Harry Thomas at the back. He's here. Rick Wise, Assistant City Manager, also standing next to him. John James, Development Services and Planning Director. Sandra Villarreal, Health Director. Rebecca Guerra, also from Planning. Teresa James, I'm also not wearing my glasses. Teresa James, City Attorney at the back. Anybody else on staff we should recognize? I see Del Velasquez from downtown San Angelo. I see lots of restaurateurs, lots of food truck vendors. Ross Coleman, Fire Marshal. We have a representative also from Police Department at the back. Okay, let's get started. Just a quick explanation of why we're here. The last several years, most of us have seen an increase in the number of food trucks in town, and it's steadily and slowly increased over the last few years. I think we have maybe 10 or 12 that I know of that are operating in town. Many of us have seen the increase of food trucks and food truck courts nationwide, statewide, and even regionally as we travel around. I've had several vendors approach me, and I approached other staff members asking different questions about, what the limitations are, what the requirements are, what the permitting process is. The questions I generally get are basically, where can I set up in public properties and park properties? And so I have to field those questions. And then also I've heard concerns or desires to actually set up a food truck court. And so at one point, I was thinking of the idea of how might we make that happen. And so I took that idea to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board last fall, and they basically said, put that idea on hold. What we need to do first is to have a public forum to get everybody's comments from food truck vendors and restaurateurs of what their questions and comments and concerns are. So that's why we're here tonight. Let's see. It's likely we'll be able to answer some of your questions tonight. We'll try to answer as much as we can. Really, we just really want to hear what your comments and concerns are. Daniel, our city manager, just walked in the red sweater at the back. And I also saw Lori DeCello. Did you come in with the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board? And also, I want to make one thing clear. We're not making any decisions tonight. We want to know where this dialogue takes us, whether we should have another follow-up public forum. And also, we as staff need to hear from City Council what their direction is to us of where we take this dialogue. So with that, any other comments from city staff before we start asking for public comment? Anything else from staff that needs to be said? I did notice, I'm sure a lot of y'all noticed, the column, the article in San Angelo Live that talked about a crackdown on food truck vendors. That is not what this is. This is not at all what this is. This is really just to hear your comments, questions, and concerns. And anybody can start. We're not going in any particular order. Just some of the topics that we could cover. And this is really why we're here tonight. So anybody can go ahead and start. We're going to obviously record this meeting, so we'll get your comments on video. And please introduce yourself before you speak.
My name is John Young. I'm the president of the San Angelo Restaurant Association. Just wanted to come out here and offer our support for the food trucks and the food truck vendors. As restaurant operators, they are a subset of the restaurant industry, and we want to support them. Full disclosure, I own a restaurant, a catering company, and I also have a food truck myself. We think that food trucks offer unique and different foods They also offer different food options across San Angelo that people can experience. It's a great opportunity for entrepreneurs to get started. Many people will start off as a food truck operator and move into a brick and mortar. So that's one of the benefits and pluses. Gives them a chance to experience their product and try the market out. As far as policies and procedures, as a restaurant association and as business owners, we are not in favor of extensive overreach by city government. However, we do fully support and encourage things that will protect the health and safety of the consumers. As the San Angelo Restaurant Association, speaking for that association, I would just like to ask that as you guys move forward with your decisions, that we have an opportunity to have a seat at that table to be able to discuss and have our input. That's it. Thank you very much for having this forum.
Thank you. Would like to notice that the Honorable Mayor Brenda Gunter has joined us. I think they're looking for a seat.
He wants to sit at the front.
Y'all, please. Plenty of us are here. Come speak.
My name is Del Velasquez. I'm the executive director for downtown San Angelo. As far as the food truck in the downtown district that show up, there's only two concerns actually that I would like to address, and one of them is the trash. One of the things that's happened has been when we see it over the weekend, and some of it is obviously just from the weekend, but we've noticed since we've had more food trucks show up in the downtown area on the weekends especially, there's a lot more trash. We do have trash facilities that are placed along especially Chadburn and Concho Street, where predominantly that's where you're going to see the food trucks located. We do have trash receptacles. They do get filled up over the weekend. And so much so that there's the overflow, and the wind, we live in a windy city, blows them out, and so we see trash pretty much everywhere, especially again on Chadburn Street. The other concern that I would like to address is the parking issue in terms of food trucks taking up multiple parking spaces. Obviously on weekends we have a great crowd downtown, and that's wonderful. We're ecstatic about the fact that we're starting to become an entertainment hub, or if not started, we are an entertainment hub, especially again on weekends. And so parking then becomes somewhat of an issue, and we see trucks taking more than one parking space, and I would like to see something to do to address that. I've seen trucks pull up up on sidewalks, and then also I've seen trucks use extension cords, electrical extension cords, to go into a building to provide themselves electricity. And I think that's a safety factor that I don't think that should be happening in relationship to just aesthetics and just cleanliness and safety. I wanted to address those two issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Please come forward. Especially food truck vendors, if you have any desires or questions about where you can set up and where you can operate, or want to talk about what your dreams are for your business, we'd like to hear that.
My name's Jesse Noriega. And I don't have a food truck yet. I got one getting built from the ground up, and it should be done next week. But anyway, I want to know, where can you park inside the city limits, or in the downtown, that you're legally parked?
Can some of our planning folks address that? I don't know if it.
Yeah, in terms of where food trucks can locate, there are a couple of issues, depending on whether it's on private property or in the public right-of-way in the street. If it's on private property, we have an itinerant business permit that you start, I think, with the police department, but it gets reviewed by a number of different departments. You do have to have the property owner's permission, so you can't just set up in a parking lot of a business without getting their permission first. And getting that itinerant business permit from the city. And in those situations, you can only locate on properties zoned for commercial development. So, for example, you couldn't set up in a neighborhood on private property. If we're talking about setting up in the street, then you can basically set up anywhere in the city. The same zoning restrictions don't apply if you're setting up in the street. But you do have to follow all parking rules. So, for example, Dell's concern, he mentioned downtown. If you are parking downtown, you can't park parallel to the street if there are angled parking spaces. So you can't park across 3, 4, or 5 parking spaces. You have to park legally. If you're in another area where parallel parking is allowed, then you can park along those streets. So again, the short answer to that is you have to follow all parking regulations for whatever street you're wanting to set up on. That's kind of an overview. I don't know if anybody has specific questions about other particular areas, but really that big distinction is whether or not you're setting up in the street or on private property. And again, for private property, you do have to have that permit from the city. Again, you have to follow the parking rules. So on some streets, it's signed for no parking. So obviously you can't park in a no parking zone. You can't park too close to an intersection. Basically, the same rules that apply to you as a driver would apply for any parking on the street. Well, I might defer to some others here from other city staff because, again, currently to get one of those itinerant business permits, you have to go through the police department. You have to get a health permit, a restaurant permit from the health department. In the planning department, we verify the zoning. Depending on what you're doing, you may also need a review by the fire marshal's office and perhaps others. We do have a checklist that you can go through that lists each and every department that you have to go through, and each one will have their own. The fire department is concerned about certain things. The health department is concerned about other things, but you do have to make sure you go through all of those different departments.
But a starting point is at your office?
Right now, the starting point is the police department. They're the ones who you go to first. You get a checklist, and it steps you through all of the other departments you have to go through and get those sign-offs from various different departments.
Actually doesn't necessarily start with the police department. We do have that checklist, and actually the police department wants to make sure that you have already visited everybody, you've gotten all your permits before you actually take this form to them in order to get your itinerant merchant's permit. So that was something that I wanted to say. And also, Carl, what I was telling you, a lot of folks ask us, what about parks? What about the lake? They want to know if they can park there, so I kind of wanted you to, talk
Yes,
about that.
if there is a desire to park, set up at a park, at the lake, or anywhere in town, I'm the point of contact for that. And it really are very limited where that can be, since most of our parks are zoned residential. Very few of them are zoned commercial. It changes if there's a special event, a public event, then food truck vendors can set up as part of that event at virtually any park.
Is Lake Nasworthy different than other parks?
They can't what? Lake Nasworthy. The ordinances are a little bit different at Lake Nasworthy, so there's a little more freedom actually to set up there, and I would just have to visit with the vendor to discuss those. Mike?
All right, I'm Charles of Mr. Mochi's Food Truck. We're fairly new as far as our truck to the San Angelo scene for food. We've worked with other businesses here in town, actually here in the past, and we went off and ventured on our own. As far as the paperwork goes, as she brought up a minute ago, just for future people coming up, you know, like this gentleman over here is opening up here pretty soon. He's going to learn the process is, you know, kind of like a ping pong ball. It's bouncing back and forth from one office to another office and back to the same office just to get the same signature that you couldn't have before you had this guy's signature. That's a big headache for us back and forth. I mean, I understand that y'all have y'all's rules and regulations for that, but just on our standpoint, for somebody trying to get going, it does take a lot of time and effort to get that handled. As going back to parking, you know, you want us to take up one parking space. There's a lot of people here that have trailers. They don't have a truck. You know, like ours is actual truck with wheels, motor, and everything. We can park it in a parking spot. But depending on what kind of food we have fryers in there, we have ovens. We have to have everything leveled out. So if I'm in a parking spot, you park anywhere downtown, you're going to pull in, you know, at an angle, and then you got your fryer with grease on one side higher than the other. You know, it's a safety hazard. Somebody comes by and hits you, you know, with that fryer on, grease spills out, you can get fire hazard. You know, I mean, of course we have fire systems in place for that, but I mean, accidents do happen. We need to have, you know, a spot for our trailer, for our truck, with a zoned area around it to be safe for us. As well as parking parallel down the street, same thing. Most of our trucks are either have propane tanks, and they're either in the front of the truck or the back of the truck. If someone would come down 35, 40 miles an hour down the street down Chadbourne and slam in the back of my truck, more than likely one of my tanks is going to explode. You know, I parked up on the curb the other day. I had an officer come by and say, "Hey, you can't park on the curb." I said, "I understand." I said, "We'll move it." I said, "Let me ask you a question." I said, "We've had accidents in this area, and the officers worked the accident, fire department came, worked the accident, paramedics came, worked the accident. They came and ate with us. Nobody mentioned anything about our parking. Why now?" She's like, "Whatever I say goes, didn't matter what they say goes." I understand circumstances and times and rules and all that goes on, but like, we need to have a certain system in place for our parking. You know, if your trailer's 16 foot long, 24 foot long, 12 foot long, you can't park parallel. You're gonna be sticking out in the middle of the street. It's not safe for anybody, even worse than parking parallel. So if we can just, you know, kind of set down some guidelines, get us a little more, I don't know the word I'm trying to, leeway. Yeah, a little leeway on where we're at, what we're doing, the time we're there. You know, if we're downtown, I haven't been downtown myself at all yet, but if we're downtown and it's 10 o'clock to 2 in the morning and it's a parking issue, whether we're there or not, I guarantee you it's going to be a parking issue downtown. You know what I'm saying? The 2 extra spots that we're out of the way is not going to be an issue for anybody. So just, you know, kind of take that in consideration for us in the future.
I'm hearing two things. Streamline the process to get all the checks from the different departments.
Right.
To try to streamline that.
Yes, sir.
And look and consider creating designated and safe parking spaces in the downtown area.
I wouldn't say a designated area, but if you do have an area, let it be known that your vehicle or your trailer can fit in a certain area to where you have area for people to come to you safely without having to shuffle between vehicles or on the sidewalk or anything like that, but just where we have enough room to be there safely and not obstruct anybody's travel for vehicles or sidewalk traffic as well. Yeah, 2 at the most. I mean, and another thing, like I said about the angle, the trailers, the trucks that we're in, you know, some of them have jacks on them to where you can, you know, level it back out, but some of the parking spots, you know, all around town streets, they're not all level. The closer you get to the curb, the more it dips off, you know. I mean, I guess it may be hard from a standpoint to understand if you don't work in the kitchen or you haven't had, you know, kitchen experience. To you know, you need your water. You're gonna set something up. You don't want it tilting. I mean, just little things like that that you may take into consideration for us.
Good, thank you. Those are good comments.
Just a suggestion for that. I don't set up at night downtown, but when we do go there, we see the food trucks and we, you know, want to support local businesses. And I see those same issues. Downtown, there are some parking areas. I don't know if those are actual privately owned because they are up on the street and there's parking lot sections there. Maybe there's a way that can work with those, like right by Fat Boss, there's a parking spot right there, and then one further down by Grinners across the street, there's some parking spots. So maybe those locations which are leveled off, maybe you can work something with whoever owns that. If it's a private or a public, I'm not sure. But that way they're not out in the street and they're able to, utilize those level parking spaces off the street, and that way they can use that area for that. So maybe that's a suggestion. But what I had a question was earlier when we were talking about where you can set up as far as at parks and other private like churches. And so I guess I'm kind of confused on when it's okay you can set up. I'm not sure if churches are zoned as commercial to be able to set up there, but when it's okay to have, like, you can set up a food truck there and it be considered a fundraiser and you're okay, but you go to set up there, you have permission to be there, but you're there not necessarily as a fundraiser, then you can't. And so I just wanted to get some clarity on how that works out. The same safety, the same health code, the same everything's like that. So I just wanted to make sure that provides more, since we can't just pull up at a parking spot at Kirby Park or something and, but there's a church that I work with and do, that I attend that would let me be in there, but I don't want to, go against any rules or guidelines based on that, so.
And I realized the first time I got up here, I forgot to introduce myself, although I guess Carl introduced me at the beginning, but I'm John James, Director of Planning and Development Services. So we look at the zoning and those kinds of things where these can be allowed. Right now, under our ordinances, if many of our churches and schools and those sorts of uses are zoned residential because they're in residential areas, so right now, you would not be in compliance with the ordinance if you set up in one of those locations. But I think that's a good point. That's something that we may need to look at is if we do want to allow those to set up in churches or schools or other non-residential uses that just happen to be zoned residentially. So I think that's definitely something we'll put on our list to look at.
So it is okay if you call it a fundraiser, you can go and sell your food product.
Mike, remember to speak on the mic, please.
No, well, the question was if it's a fundraiser, the same rules would still apply. So I think even as a fundraiser, you still have to get the same permits to operate on at a church, for example. So it wouldn't be any different just because it's a fundraiser. But again, I think that's a good point that you raised that we need to take a look at.
And we do have ordinances and policies that do allow for food truck vendors to set up on parks, which are zoned residential for special events.
Right. Some special events, there is a special event permit that the city has, and so in some cases those can be treated differently. So that might apply to something like a church fundraiser if they qualify for that special event. So again, there are some different circumstances.
Okay, so I guess I'm still confused. So what circumstance can I go set up at a school, and what circumstance can I go set up at a church, since they're not deemed commercial?
If they get a special event permit for a fundraiser or other special event, and that special event permit specifically authorizes food trucks as part of the event, then that would be one situation where you could. As I mentioned earlier, there's still that distinction between setting up on private property versus the right-of-way. So I know some of our schools, for example, have ice cream truck or snow cone that comes and sets up in the street. As I mentioned earlier, we don't have those same restrictions if you set up in the street as it is on private property. So I know that gets a little confusing, but there are those distinctions of private property versus in the street, whether it's a special event or just normally setting up on an average day. But those are something that we can, when you come to us to seek out that permit, we can explain all those differences to you and what applies to your particular circumstance. I'll just add to that one more thing.
He's still
one
confused.
of the things that we're
Be out in the street, not safe,
Those are the kinds of things we want to hear from you, and we're making lists of the things that we want to go back and look at. So again, we know that our ordinances may not be perfect right now because when they were written, food trucks weren't even a thing. And so that's why we're here listening to you all to see what kinds of concerns we need to be looking at.
So can I get a special event permit for every day of the week?
No.
Can
Let me step in real quick. I think our main goal right now, like I don't own a food truck, but I work for Daddy's food truck, and we're pretty stationary. We're at Fiddle Strings. I think a lot of these food truck owners, like their main objective, their one goal, their dream is to just have a business, and to show what they're passionate about. I think that the focus of this at the beginning was to get maybe a food truck park or somewhere where everyone can just go, and because I know our customers, a lot of them, they come and they order and they call in and they drive up and they get their food, but they want to try something different. There's a lot of food chains around here. There's a lot of food chains that are just opening up in the city as well, and they want to just try something different because they might go to Panda Express when it opens for 2 weeks and then, they're over that. But they want to, the thing about food trucks is that there's a versatile, it's just different cuisines. I mean, if you've tried all the different food trucks and the owners are here, they're all doing something different. And that's the good thing about it. Everybody likes something different. They want to try something different. We get new customers all the time. So if we can just get a location where everybody can just come, I think that would be the focus of this right now. And everybody's going to have their questions and concerns about, especially if they're just starting off, if they're mobile, they're going to have the biggest issues. I mean, we've done maybe 2 or 3 events, and those have always been successful. So everything brings families together, and it brings people out to the city. I know if bigger cities have food truck parks, if you go to bigger cities like Austin, Dallas, I mean, I'm sure all over the country. But I think that's just what we need to focus on and promote that, and good luck to everybody, and thanks for everybody's business that comes to Daddy's.
Yeah, this public forum did initiate from an initial discussion about having a food truck court. That was just an idea. Ideally, in my opinion, I think it's best if that is done on private property by the private sector as opposed to the city. And eventually we may have one, but we got to be pretty smart about where that exists, where that's set up.
Hi, Marla Ferguson with Chinchorro Taco. To kind of piggyback on what was just said, I actually kind of disagree with, I like the idea of a food truck park, and definitely not, run by the city, but on private property. But, the whole idea behind mobile food is being mobile. And I like the idea of people going different places, not just sitting in one place and owning just that one spot like a restaurant. I think the idea, like with Fiddle Strings, if they rotated people in and out, if there are places that don't serve food, that allow different food trucks to come in and set up, they have a captive audience, they have different people coming in, and that's what for me, being a mobile food owner, I feel like that is the idea behind it. To have a food truck park is, it's a cool idea for sure. I don't think that we're quite that diverse yet, but I think we're headed that direction, which is great. But I would like to see more mobile food just be more mobile. And I don't know if we have regulations on that, if people have to move, or if they can stay in one spot. That's one of my questions. So,
Sandra. And before she comes up, I would like to notice that Councilmember Lane Carter stepped in earlier. He's at the back.
Okay, so our ordinance does say that you have to be mobile every 3 days. Even the Texas Food Establishment rules say that you do have to at least show mobility once a year. So the ordinance, the way that the intent of it when it was written back even before I was here, was that we wanted the mobiles to go back to their base of operation, to go ahead and clean out their mobile, etc. We have made some exceptions. We have allowed some of the mobiles, because they are parked right next to their commissary, their base of operation, to stay there. However, the Texas Food Establishment rules still state that at least once a year they're going to have to move that mobile. So we are working with one, but everyone else has been mobile. We've seen them out events, and those are great. The guys go out there, they inspect them at these events. But the ordinance does state that that mobile has to be moved at least every third day.
Okay. And that's just in the sense that, I mean, they just show that they are not,
They are
they
not
can actually just
stationary.
move.
Yeah, because if they're stationary, obviously there's going to be other rules that they're going to have to follow as being a permanent location. And so that's not the intent of a mobile. They are supposed to be mobile and show that they are readily mobile. So, yeah.
Okay. Just one more thing while I'm up here. When you were talking about the parking downtown and parking in the spaces, I mean, we kind of addressed this, but if you are, let's say, parked in front of a business that is allowing you to use their parking spaces, I mean, are there designated parking spaces for businesses downtown? Does that make sense?
There really aren't. The parking spaces in front of businesses are in the public right-of-way, so those are all public spaces. So just because the parking space is in front of business A, that doesn't give them any right to say who can or can't park in that particular parking space.
So the issue now is you just don't want the trucks or trailers to take up those spots up to the sidewalks. Is that right? I mean, take up those parking spaces just anywhere along the streets downtown?
Well, again, you can't park across multiple parking spaces. And again, that's the current ordinance, the way it's written. Part of the feedback we're wanting to get from you all is that a reasonable restriction or is that an unreasonable restriction, and should we look at changing it? So, so it's not about what we want, but it's about what the current ordinance says. And you have to park, if you're going to park in the street, you have to park legally for the location you're parking.
Okay. Well, just note that, I would like to change that if we can. Because again, it's safer for the customers, it's safer for the food trucks, 2 parking spaces, for people to be able to come up to a window or, whatever. But yes, thank you.
I'm sorry, I came in a little bit late, so touching on what she said about downtown.
Introduce yourself, please.
Sorry, I'm Leslie Reyna. I'm with Reyna Stock on Madre. So because I missed that part that maybe y'all were discussing about the downtown parking spaces, which directly affects our food truck. So can you just kind of recap that briefly, because I missed that part of the discussion?
Yeah, basically, you have to park legally. So, for example, if there's angled parking spaces, you can't park straddling, parallel, taking up 2, 3, 4 of those spots. You would have to either park angled like the angle is, or if you're too long to do that, you would have to find someplace else where you can fit and park legally for the way that the parking is striped in that location.
Okay. But other than that, there's no other legal restriction to taking up a single parking spot if you're fitting within the constraint of that spot?
Right. If there's limitations like 1 hour parking, or some places are signed for no parking, as long as you're following the parking rules for how it's signed and striped in that location, then you should be good.
Okay, so for a 3-hour limit, if you were parked from 11 p.m. to 2 a.m., you're still covered within that. That's still a legal operation within that parking spot. Okay.
Stephen Bright, Semper Fresh Kettle Corn. The little permits we get from the police department, are those really necessary? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but is that the same permit that homeless people need to panhandle? Or door-to-door salesmen need?
PD, you want to address that?
Well, I mean, don't panhandlers need a permit,
Mike,
technically?
please speak on the mic.
Don't panhandlers need a permit, technically?
Yes.
Oh, that's what I meant, panhandlers. Okay, well, okay. The guy who sells door-to-door cleaning supplies on the weekends and bothers all of us, they need a permit, right? Yes. And we need that same permit?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
Same permit. The itinerary merchant permit.
Okay.
That every merchant, whether regardless of what they're selling, if they're going from place to place or whatever, is required to have.
Please, everybody, please speak to the mic because this is being recorded and videoed.
Or getting the permit?
Itinerant merchants
Yes,
permit?
ma'am.
Yes, we've got to make sure that all of the other divisions have been visited, so, and have the signatures, the necessary signatures, if you are required a permit, a health permit in particular. So, when you have gotten you've gotten approval from the inspectors and, obviously you have your health permit, and then you have also visited with planning, zoning, and all of those other divisions. Once you have those, then you take it to the records division of the police department, and you get your itinerant merchants permit. They are only good for 6 months, so you will have to visit again. You will have to go visit with them again after 6 months, and more than likely, probably get another signature. I know some, I'm not exactly sure, I can't speak for them, but some of the staff at PD will go ahead and ask for another form to be filled out by all of the divisions. Some just want to see, depending, again, I'm not going to speak for them. Sometimes it's just a matter of showing them your health permit and you're okay. So it all depends. And sometimes you don't even need a health permit. So if it's like, we have gotten vendors, they're only selling fresh, uncut fruit, peaches, etc. They don't need a health permit, so we just sign off, no health permit required, fresh, uncut fruits, and then they take that same form to the police department. So that's kind of how that goes.
I'm Kevin Little, one of the health inspectors. I'm just going to butt in here. One issue that I've seen, the system is set up that when a new operator comes to get a permit through us, obviously that makes sense. They go through all the departments to make sure their unit is legal, and then they take that to the police department to get their itinerant merchant's permit. But if any of these guys hire somebody, a new employee, 6 months, a year down the road, does that individual employee need to get their own food service permit? The system has some stumbling points within it, where they show up at the police department and they're denied. I've had that happen in several instances, and I'm fairly certain that there's many people out there without the permit because they just gave up. They're not getting their own food service permit. They're just a new employee wanting to be legal. So,
I wouldn't think that an employee would need one as long as the owner had one. Am I wrong there, Sandra? Or does each employee?
Well, what I have always known is each employee that is working the mobile has to have a badge from the police department, because I believe y'all run a small, some kind of background on them, is my understanding.
That is true.
And so every employee's got to have one, is my understanding.
Yes, ma'am.
When we first started, four and a half years ago, what I was told was anybody that's actually making a sales transaction needs to have one. So if you're just an employee, but you're in the back and you have nobody doing a cashier process, then you don't need to have one. But if you're making the actual sale transaction, then you need to have one. That's what I was told, and that's what we've been going by.
That's factual.
Sorry, so just to clarify then, employees don't need them as long as they're not transacting.
If they're not doing the actual transaction or sales, I wouldn't think they would need one. That's correct. But if they're involved in the sale of the item, they do.
So like if I hired a cashier, part of the hiring process would be to send her downtown.
That's correct.
To get an IT, okay.
Yes.
I'm sorry, and I don't mean to, I guess my question behind all of that is not necessarily the problem with obtaining the permit, but the 6 months. Because like she said, every 6 months then we'd need to contact each one of these agencies, which I would assume would be at moot point for you guys to have to come back out, re-inspect, and do, go through all the motions of getting all of these things done. Because, like the fire marshal, he has to come out and take time out of his day to come and inspect your trailer or whatever in order to sign off on your form. I would just imagine that maybe extending that or talking about extending that for the full year, just like the other permits are, that would probably be more productive for the business owners as well as your own agencies and the taxpayers that are paying for that.
Good point.
Lori DeSallo, and I'm with the Parks Advisory Board. But as an outsider in this whole process, I don't get the part why an employee who takes money for a business that doesn't make profit needs to get a permit. That doesn't make any sense to me. They're not keeping that money for themselves, as per se a transient vendor would, but they're working for somebody and paying that person money. That seems weird to me.
Kind of what I was getting at. The health department says my food's good to go. Comptroller says I'm giving all the money necessary to the state on every transaction. Why do I need a permit to freely exchange goods and money with customers? That's what I was kind of asking.
It's like everybody at who works at McDonald's.
Yeah. Does every employee at McDonald's get one?
Yeah.
But is it necessary?
Well, by law, if you're a restaurant owner, every wait staff that you have, every kitchen employee that you have has to have taken the test and bought and paid the fee to handle any.
Well, yeah, but that's not the itinerant merchant permit. That's what we're talking about, is like if.
Have to separate, and sometimes
Please, we need to speak on the mic.
same people that's making the hamburger, they might also be taking the cash, sometimes.
He's asking for you to speak into them.
Aside from it's the law, is there a good reason why we need the permit? Like practicality.
As I said, we probably won't be able to answer all questions tonight.
Okay.
But we are getting your comments, which is important.
All right, just to go back on what he's saying about the permits, I believe it's like $10 per permit or something like that. It's not much. You got to renew it every 6 months. She mentioned that every employee by their job should have it done. The officer mentioned that there's some kind of small background check that's done by that in that process. I mean, is that just another permit that the city's making money off of every employee in every business in San Angelo for $10 a head? Is that all that is?
I think there's a difference between what Mayor was saying as far as each employee, her employees, they all have to have a food handlers, and you guys know that, food handler and food manager. Right. And she's probably talking about that. This is an itinerant merchant's permit, which her staff does, a permanent establishment does not, those employees don't need itinerant merchant's permits. So it is a little different, and so I think that's something that we maybe need to look at, and that's something that police is going to have to visit because that falls under their ordinances and their purview, so that's something we might just have to discuss within that
As
department.
far as our hiring as business owners, what kind of aspects do we need to take into consideration for your background check before we even take an application?
Mike, please. No, if you're going to answer.
Let me answer. I'm Teresa James. I'm the city attorney. Let me answer generally what the purpose of the itinerant permit is. Like John said earlier, food trucks weren't even around when we passed those rules. So you guys are being stuffed into a system that really doesn't fit really well, which is part of the point of this, so we can figure out how to make it fit better. The general purpose for the itinerant permit is the people who get those generally are people who come into town, they're here for a weekend, and they sell stuff in a parking lot, and they leave. And there is a public safety need to know who those folks are. Because you guys fit within those rules, and we haven't changed the rules yet,
That's why you have to get it. But still, any mobile business like that, there is a public safety need to know who's on our street selling in parking lots and at your door. Now, as far as the homeless folks are concerned, that's a different question. I mean, essentially what they're doing is not considered selling anything, so we want to know who they are for a whole different reason, but that is a different process and permit that they would have to get.
Going back to the parks and recreation, I guess, area, there is certain trucks that park at Lakeview and park at Central. When we first started, I called the schools and saying, hey, we're a new truck in the area. We know if we can park on your property. Like, you can't park on the school property at all. The school itself has its rules and guidelines for its own, food regulations. And, of course, our stuff wouldn't meet their guidelines because they're on, everything needs to be healthy now for the kids. So you can park at the school. You just have to park at the edge of the curb. At Lakeview, I don't think it's an issue. I think at Central, it's an issue because you have to park down by the river, by that little bridge. And considering that, what are the rules for your truck as far as being on the river?
Well,
because you said the river is considered.
Yes, I've noticed a few vendors that are set up on the Veterans Memorial Drive along the river next to the high school. Right. Generally, we haven't had a concern with that, but there may be a concern coming up because there is a bike lane that's going to be painted on the roadway along that route, which could impact your operation there, anybody's operation there.
And going back to my original statement, whenever I came up about the sidewalks, is it actually illegal to park on a sidewalk here in town? If you have your commissary business has a sidewalk front, can you park on that?
You can't block a sidewalk.
No, you can't.
Even your storefront, all that the same? Okay. Just checking. All right.
Yeah, sidewalks are for pedestrians walking and wheelchairs and things, and so you can never block those.
Please, we must be on the mic.
If you got an awning over a building, say, on the outside, and then the walkway's over here, and you're not blocking the walkway. You're actually on their porch. On their property? Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not in that situation. I'm just asking.
You want to answer that?
That's one of those that I think, I don't know that we know for sure what the answer is. I think if it's not a designated parking space, then you probably can't park there.
Archie from Archie's Food Truck. I want to know about the Coliseum.
Coliseum?
Yeah, why are we not allowed to go out there as local vendors and set up and sell our product and the rodeo and everything? And on the outside of the Coliseum, it's owned by the city of San Angelo, but they can bring somebody from California, and they don't have fire suppression systems. They don't have nothing, and we have to go by the rules and guidelines, and that is owned by the city of San Angelo.
And you're talking about during the rodeo?
Yep, during the rodeo.
Yeah.
Why can we not set up on the outside of it? Why do we have to pay more high dollar fees? Well, we've already paid our fees to be in the city of San Angelo.
Well, in the Coliseum area during the rodeo, basically the Stock Show Rodeo Association, they rent the entire property, so it's under their control. For
even the public parking on the outside, they rent the midway, but they don't rent the outside of it.
They rent the Coliseum, which includes the parking.
But you can't park anywhere on the streets around the Coliseum.
That's a different question.
Why can't? Well, I want to know why can't we? They say because I've asked everybody. I've asked her. I've asked everybody. They say that area over there is restricted because what it is yeah, like if you bring us in, we're gonna outsell them. I mean, it's pretty simple. That's why y'all are having all this. It's because we actually make good food. So if y'all put us out there, I mean, why not? Y'all own it. The city of San Angelo owns it.
We also lease that facility for different reasons, and we lease different portions of that facility, so without knowing exactly what the rodeo has control over during that event. The other issue is, yes, you can park in the public right-of-way unless you're obstructing traffic. And the traffic at the rodeo is if y'all have been, you know it's a lot of traffic, and so that could, depending on where you're talking about, play a role. But again, that's a very detail-specific question, I mean, if you want more information, you can feel free to contact my office and we can talk about it, and we can talk with Carl and the assistant chief and everybody.
I was just wondering, because we pay our fees just like everybody else. These guys are from out of town. They're taking all of our money out of town. Why can't we, as local vendors, keep our money in this town? And it's our rodeo. You know what I mean? It's our rodeo. We ought to be able to have a chance to be out there somewhere. You don't have to be on the Midway. It can be anywhere on the outside. I mean, there's 100,000 acres out there, and they can't put us on there anywhere. And we're local vendors. And it's owned by the city of San Angelo, but we got permits through y'all.
During the Stock Show Rodeo Association, when they operate those several weeks, they do have use of the entire property, including the parking areas.
But all them. But why do we have to have a fire suppression system? And why we got to pay all the money and they don't? They get a special permit for 3 days. They don't have a fire suppression system, but they can set up on the Midway. I just really want to know why all these rules are in place, but that's a special event that we can make a lot of money at as local vendors, and we're here from San Angelo, and we can't make the money that they're making, and they don't have to operate by the same rules and regulations. I just don't understand it. So I think that's a major concern that needs to be addressed, because they're taking that money out of town. They're not bringing the money here. The community, we're set up in the communities, so the communities are going to come eat.
To find a place to be able to set up near the Stock Show Rodeo when it operates during those 3 weeks.
Yep. I mean, every one of us. I brought it up on the news. I was hoping they would play it, and they didn't play it. They cut my section out. So I was hoping they'd play it because I really wanted to play it. So I just they cut mine completely out because I had a question for the whole public. I mean, that's why I told them on my deal was, hey, if the public wants us out there, then speak up. You know what I mean? Because we want to be out there.
I think what Archie's trying to say, I mean, there has to be someone in here, maybe one of the snow cone guys or something, maybe from the Lions Club that knows, because the Lions Club does set up out there at the rodeo. There's a few snow cone shops that is out there at the rodeo. How do y'all get in there? How do we, who do we? Who?
You have to contact the stock.
Yeah.
They're the organization that runs that.
Okay, you got to call them.
Okay.
I guess what he's saying, what he was saying is.
On mic, please.
I guess he may be maybe somebody told me he couldn't. I don't know. I didn't.
No, well, I guess what he's trying to say, Archie's is trying to say is that, yes, the Stock Show Rodeo is a individually privatized, sanctioned event that they pay money to travel and reserve those spaces. I mean, that money comes from a totally different source other than San Angelo and the money that we pay in for permits and all that stuff. But what Archie's is saying is that there's space for both of us. Like, if we can't participate because that particular union doesn't allow outsiders because they reserve all their vendor spots years in advance, then there should be a place where the local food trucks, which again, that would be beneficial for the city, because if we're making more money, y'all are making more money, the comptroller is, then why would there not be some type of provision nearby the event for the local vendors who are, like he said, paying for, those suppression systems are in the thousands of dollars. The equipment that we have to operate is, it's a huge expense that we invest in our business to be operating safely, to serve food that's safe for the public in the city of San Angelo. The patrons here all love the food trucks. I'm sure you guys know that. There's a lot of buzz around every single one of our establishments, because he's right. The food is really good. A lot of us are in it, not just for the money, but for the passion of what we do. And we enjoy it. So it just makes sense, he's right, to have it in the arena of discussion, especially considering, all the buzz that's around, new businesses coming up, specifically food trucks, that we have an opportunity to capitalize on all of the out-of-town people that are coming for the rodeo, visitors, the huge gathering of people. To have a space for us, would be beneficial for everybody involved, so that the city of San Angelo can also
benefit from the money that's coming into the town. And us as food truck owners for putting in all of these expenses and, you know, making sure that we have everything that you guys need for us to be operating legally when it's true. I mean, our food truck, we travel out of town also. So on the other side of that coin, when we go to Houston, for instance, for a huge festival, they don't come and check our fire suppression system. We don't need to go through 50 different, you know, departments and signatures and pay all these fees. You pay a one-time special event, you know, vendor fee, and then that's it. You know, the inspector comes out to make sure your food's the right temperature, and that's about how that goes. And that's what I think Archie's is saying, is that these vendors that are coming in with following the rodeo, which is totally, you're right, absolutely outside of the arena of what we can control as the city, right? They're coming in and they're not having to operate by those guidelines. So, you know, as a concession for us, we should be able to work with the city and be involved in those types of events, because that is the point. We're mobile. We should be able to, that's the point of being a mobile vendor, to be able to go to the crowd as opposed to making the crowd have to come to us.
She covered it basically, but no, she did a better job than I did, because I don't know how to say it, but I can tell you, like La Mesa, whenever we go to Chicken Fry Festival, Tamale Festivals, everything, we are permitted and our trailers are like way above the standard because of the way the health department here is done and everything else. We're actually better than anybody there. So y'all have done a good job on that part, but I just really wanted to know, that's why I brought it up, because y'all own that property. City of San Angelo owns that property, and y'all are asking us what our opinions are, and we really want to know why. So I've talked to a bunch of them, and I'd really like to know why.
I'm Jesse Sanchez, co-owner of the Pet Barbecue, and I've actually looked into the process of setting up out there. We've been on the waiting line for 2 years. The spots that are there are almost impossible to get. They have the same people every year. The bad thing about it is they charge you 25% of your whatever you make. So, with that being said, we kind of don't want to do it.
Come on up.
Okay, why do y'all have rules? Why do y'all have rules for us as local vendors, right? As mobile. These guys are mobile too. Is the fire marshal and them going to be out there to see if they have fire suppression systems at that rodeo?
I assure you they do inspect out there.
So what do we do when we find one that don't have one? Because we do.
Report it. It's the fire marshal. Mike. He doesn't want to come up. His name's not Mike.
Okay, I feel like I got to sing. We go out to the rodeo and we check out the grounds and we do inspect all the vendors. We have not seen any that don't have these suppression systems, so I'm actually surprised to hear that. If you have them, then we do want to know about them, because we'll go do that. We don't have a problem. We don't have a problem giving them stop work orders or whatever we have to do to make them comply, and those things are there for your safety, and if you do it, I agree with you. They need to as well. I mean, have you seen outside vendors with no suppression systems? And yes. Now, are they cooking sandwiches, or what are they making? They're deep frying. They're deep frying? Okay, well, then that's what we want to know.
Mike. Come on up. Come on up.
One of the other thing that he was talking about is parking out by there. We can. It's just finding the spot to do it. I mean, we all can do it if we want to. We were actually offered last year by a private property for us to park up there.
I noticed that.
But we didn't do it. That wasn't us. Wrong person.
Okay.
But just, I mean, we can do it. I don't think there's a law or anything that's saying we can't do it. We just have to find the right spot. It's
Right.
just kind of a little bit of looking.
Hi, my name's Tim Condon. I have a Lone Star Cheeseburger. I think what I'm hearing from the audience is that we just want a little bit of less regulation. It's already kind of been a system where they're trying to convert laws and different things to a food truck scenario, and it just doesn't work. These little green badges, they're the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen in my life. I mean, what do we need to go get our background checked for if we're starting a business? It doesn't apply to any other business in town. It shouldn't even apply to any of our food trucks. I mean, you go around checklist after checklist after checklist. I've never seen more ignorant people when it comes to, you got to go over here. They don't know where to send you over here. You don't know. I mean, that's the most ridiculous thing ever. And so what I think I'm hearing from every single person in this room is we need to get rid of that system and get rid of it. And I think that we're also kind of hearing it as a directive from the public to just get rid of that whole system in general. Secondly, you know, where these food trucks park and where they don't park. You know, I get the whole philosophy of trying to control the food truck industry and trying to kind of regulate it in some aspect. But I think everyone in this entire room wants the food truck industry to thrive in San Angelo. I don't think there's anyone here that doesn't want that to happen. So if you want to make that happen, obviously, you know, making more regulations and adding more layers of basically red tape and everything you want to call it is doing nothing but harming our businesses. And I can speak from personal experience. I've been here 7 years. You know, every year I hear of something different and something more ridiculous and a different argument. You know, for anything in relation to a food truck. And so I think that. Just by standing in the back of the room, and I got to leave here literally right after this comment, but standing in the back of the room listening, I think every single person sitting down here, unless they haven't spoken yet, wants to see less regulation, wants to see these stupid permits go away that we have to go and get every 6 months. I mean, I've got a lot of employees, and it's the most, you know, it's the most ridiculous thing ever. And so that's just one example. There's many, many more. So I'd really like to, if there's a follow-up meeting,
Okay.
you know, possibly
We
look
wanna
at
hear
that.
those.
But I mean, just in general, you know, I don't think there's anyone that goes into business to harm the public or to do anything to cause a disturbance. I mean, I get the trash situation downtown. You know, I have another business downtown, and I see that. But, you know, that's part of growth. We're, you know, there's supply. It's not a vacant downtown anymore. You know, there's supply and demand. And people want food trucks. Yeah, they're going to make a mess. You know, let's put more trash cans out. Makes pretty easy to me, you know. Let's put more trash cans out so they can put more trash in the trash cans. I mean, it's a very simple solution. Secondly, if there's parking issues and all that kind of thing, I get all of that as well. But you know, maybe they need to go somewhere else and park in a different spot, or I don't know I don't have a solution for that aspect. But the trash thing, that can be avoided. If they're parking in a spot, you know, I think, you know, I don't think a single food truck can fit in a spot. So I think we need to kind of lax those guidelines. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I want to see downtown have a lot more food trucks come. So if we're sitting here arguing about where they park, you know, it's kind of a silly argument because their business is coming to downtown, and I'd like to see that and kind of not even be an issue, because it's kind of silly that we all waste our time on where we can and can't park in a public, you know, right away in a public. I mean, I get, you know, if it says 3 hours, that park there 3 hours and leave. You know, if it says 1 hour, park there 1 hour and leave. But you know, we can do ourselves all a favor, and this isn't as big of an issue. There's not a lot of major issues here. We just need to find practical solutions and not try to put our big government hats on and try to figure out what agency needs to do what with what other agency before they have to have a signature. Let's do away with some of these roadblocks that these small businesses are trying to jump over. I mean, if we do away with those, we'll have a much better success rate of food trucks. We'll see a lot more food trucks being successful. Mine's been here for 7 years. You know, we try to do things right, and so that's where we probably should try to head is less regulation, getting rid of these stupid things that we have to go department to department for. I like the ping pong analogy. That's the most brilliant analogy because that's exactly what we're doing. And for people who haven't done it as long as I have, it gets overwhelming, it gets daunting, and I think a lot of people give up their dreams of food service because of the ridiculous system that we have currently in place. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim.
I want to make a comment.
Just real quick, before you leave, if you haven't signed in, please do sign in.
He signed in.
At the back.
I'd like to make a comment regarding some of his things. We agree that the process we have right now doesn't work for you guys, and it feels like to us you're getting bounced back and back and back. We've already started discussions internally as to how to make that better. So we understand that. We cannot get rid of the regulations because most of them are not ours. They are the state regulations, and so we are the ones who are told that you are going to enforce these things on those folks, and rightfully so. You guys are serving food to our public, and so we can't get rid of all of those things that happen. And we also agree that if there's trash, put out a trash can and gather it. I mean, it's that easy.
But in terms of streamlining the process, that would be on us. And
yeah, no, of course, yeah, we're looking into that already.
Sid Clemmer, the latest Scoop ice cream. I think I agree with Tim about a lot of things he said about things not working. I think you can feel that. What I don't think you feel, and you probably won't unless you have the passion that we have, is the passion that we have for what we're doing. Some of us do this. I'm 75 years old almost and started a business because I had a passion to do it. These younger people have the same passion for what they're doing, and one reason that they get so frustrated being a ping pong ball is because it doesn't allow them to follow their passion. And I would hope that somewhere in this city government that you would be able to feel that passion and know that you are dealing with people who want to do things right. They want to do that, but they also have a fire in the belly to get things done. And I don't know how you would get that unless one of you decides that you have something like that you want to follow. I followed mine late in life. There are a lot of people who want to start this, and they may not make a lot of money, but they'll continue to do it if the city will allow them and just sometime get out of the way, but also just realize that these are special people. These are people who if given had the same passion for whatever, they would see things through and they would get them done, and just help these people do that.
Joshua Hewitt, owner of the Firehouse Kitchen. Just had a couple of questions. I've heard a lot of buzz going around town about the food truck park and that possibly coming here. Is that something that's going to be mandated that we have to do and we have to go to that location, or is this something that's just optional if you want to?
It was just an idea, nothing mandated, just an idea thrown out. And that's kind of what started this, having this public forum.
Okay. And then the other question was actually for the fire marshal on the fire suppression systems. I know a lot of food trucks in town don't have them, and I know whenever we got ours, we were told we had to have it. Is that actually it's something you have to have by every food truck?
Mike?
And if other people don't have it, do we just report it? Yes. Okay, that was my other. Yes, we also
Ross.
From the government, and I'm here to help you. All right. So, yes, you need to report it. We have a couple that we believe are on the run from us. You know, they go from place when we get the complaint, we go there, and then they've gone somewhere else. And so some of them are kind of chasing around, but you've had to do it. We believe it's a safety measure, and it needs to be done. So if they're going to operate here, they have to have that.
Last but not least, on the when this forum came about, was this mainly just to help the food trailers, like just get everything together and in line and make things better? Or is there possibly going to be more restrictions coming? That's a lot of stuff I've heard.
I don't know what's going to follow this. We need some direction from City Council if they want to continue having the forums, and if they want us staff to develop anything. We need some direction from council. But this really just started because we had that item to talk about a possible food truck court downtown, and we took that idea to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, and several food truck vendors showed up. And in that discussion, the board said, time out. Let's hold a public forum first and talk about what their concerns are and what their desires are.
And then how does everybody find out more about these forums in the future? Is there a sign up we can get on to where we're sent an email at least
Certainly,
where we
if
know?
you sign up on the sign-up sheet, that's part of the reason for that.
Okay, thank you.
Just to, I guess, wrap up before I personally step out. I think on both sides, we all kind of feel a little bit attacked. And I'm sure that I speak for everybody in this room when we say that we're not trying to attack you either. We want to see unity. Immediately, I don't know if you guys got to, how you guys set out this forum, but when it was released on San Angelo Live, immediately everybody in the public was like, the city hates food trucks. And seeing that reaction, I would imagine, would set off an alarm, not just, for us, but for y'all. We should be seen as a community of business owners working with the city, not against. And I think that the regulations, yes, while it's, it's difficult to navigate through all the different things that need to be done, and, it's expensive, and sure, it's going to frustrate anybody when, you think, oh, I got everything great, and then 5 seconds later, you're like, oh, crap, never mind. There's $3,000 that I need to spend today to go into business tomorrow. So those things are, of course, frustrating for any business owner. And, I speak, of course, for myself and hopefully everybody that, we want to operate. We all have the best intentions, and we want to see out of this particular meeting unity between not just us as food truck owners, but us and the city. We want to be seen as one cohesive environment, community. I don't like to be tagged 100 times in a Facebook post like that, and everybody's like, oh my God, you're going to shut down tomorrow because the city hates you. It's just, it's the public eye, it's the view that people have, and, we want to eliminate that. And I'm hoping that, now opening up this forum and seeing everybody's reactions and comments, that we can all do that together, because we do want to work with you guys to keep the public safe. We want to be safe business owners and all profit. That's, of course, the goal, the common sense reality.
Thank you.
Just really quickly, I know everyone wants to go, but what Tim talked about and what we were just mentioning is, he said it seems like everybody's for this, like everyone's happy, but the reason I'm here tonight is I wanted to see if there were people that were not happy. So I hope that if there are people that are here that have some issues, I hope that they do stand up and speak. And if that's not, that's great. But that's what I was here for, just to see, are people against food trucks or against what's happening? Kind of the same thing. Like, is this what it's all about? Or it is also a forum for those people to speak. And I just didn't know if anyone was here that wanted to touch on anything. I'm just curious more than anything else.
Is that a question to everybody else?
Sure. I'm questioning all of y'all.
And back to what she stated, we sent out a press release that basically said we're holding the public forum to hear comments and questions about food truck courts. And however, that's sent out to the media, and however the media wants to caption that, that's their decision. And if they want to get responses, they add the word crackdown on it, which this is not a crackdown.
Hi, my name's Ashley Turner. I'm with Rio Restaurant Group. We have the Concho Pearl, among other things. One of the things that's great about food trucks in general is that it allows people to get into food service who are still, they're innovating, they're trying new things, they have a smaller footprint, lower overhead for startup. It's really, really positive, and that's why I think it's done so well in a lot of larger cities, where it allows people to get out there and try new things and be innovative. And that's something that I think San Angelo, it would be great to be that, to be a part of that, to showcase that and highlight that. Because everybody in this room, there's a lot of creativity, there's a lot of excitement and passion, and you've heard that several times. So one of the things that I think might be helpful across the board, and I know that there are a lot of efforts being made by the city to streamline processes, to make things easier for business owners and, you know, even homeowners, folks in the community to get things done. One of the things that might be helpful for that is kind of an orientation packet. You want to be a food truck in San Angelo. Here are the things that would, you know, be coming across your bow, things to know, you know, phone numbers and resources, email addresses. It might also be useful to, and I don't know if you all have, I know everybody's time is valuable, but that's part of what the frustration is with getting ping-ponged around. Heaven knows you go try and get a TABC permit around anywhere, it's that same thing. And you feel like you're running office to office to office to office, person to person to person, and every time it's expensive and every conversation costs money. So it can be a little frustrating. And I think that if there was a streamlined way, even if it was a, hey, we have a monthly gathering of all the people you need in one place, you know, and then if that makes sense for folks to be at, great. And otherwise, if that doesn't fit into their schedule, they can ping pong around. But again, a complete forum, a complete packet of here's what's coming your way. If you want to be a food truck in San Angelo, here are what the guidelines are. Something that you can actually give people. So that's my suggestion. And in terms of the only thing I've ever heard from, and it was non-restaurant folks, non-industry folks, about food trucks is frustrations from other business owners feeling like food trucks get to shortcut by not having to put in ADA bathrooms, by not having to meet, you know, various standards that, you know, brick and mortars do have to meet. And while I get that frustration, I also think it's moot because I don't think those people are out there hustling in a food truck every day. It's a different challenge, and it's a different style of business. So anyway, I'm excited about food trucks. I think they're wonderful. I hope, and I know that most of the people in this room are, and I don't, hopefully that the city's goal is not to come at this with the language of crackdown. I think that's a poor way to represent it. But I hope that you might consider trying to streamline some of those and get us resources quicker, earlier, faster.
Good comments.
And if I could just piggyback on that, as Teresa mentioned earlier, we've already started looking at some ways to streamline the processes to maybe reduce the ping pong effect that we've mentioned. Also having handouts that will better describe what all those processes are so you know what you're getting into. But if there's anybody out there that's looking to start the process that doesn't yet have a food truck, we also have what we call a consultation. You can schedule right from the city's website, or you can call us up in the Planning and Development Services Department. But we will put you in a room with somebody from health, fire marshal, engineering, planning, everybody who's involved in this process. We'll get everybody in the same room with you, and you can ask all the questions you want and hopefully come away from that knowing exactly what the process is. So I would encourage anyone to take advantage of that process where you can get all your questions answered at one time in one room with everybody you need to meet with.
So that goes for like if I'm supposed to pick up my trailer this week sometime. Say I pick it up Friday, and I can call you and say, hey, can you set up an appointment for me so I can get all my permits?
Well, the consultation is to help you understand what all the process is. That doesn't necessarily mean you'll walk away from that meeting with all your signatures and permits, because we still may require certain things to be inspected. And
yes, sir, I understand that, but they will look at it that day. Like,
yes, yes.
All right, thank you.
Something that probably everyone agree, all the food truckers agree on is maybe the green permits could go, if there's any way we could figure that one out. I know that there's probably not an answer to this question tonight, but something we probably all feel is the city concessionaire contract, you know, like the River Stage, the Texas Bank Sports Complex. Yeah, I get like he's got exclusivity, or they've got exclusivity to food sales, but I mean, could that be adjusted some? Like we won't sell hot dogs, chips, or drinks. You know, we'll sell our food, and they can sell their food. I mean, a lot of the public wishes food trucks could come to events on city property when we're not allowed. And again, that's more money that we could make for ourselves and make for the city. Yeah.
Right, the city does have a
It is
contract.
a common frustration. Probably
Okay.
not an answer though. No answer in sight.
Well, we do have a contract with the concessionaire, and so any changes to that would have to be amended in that agreement. I'm not saying it can't be done. That's how it happens. Any more comments? Last call. Yeah, that.
Could we get a mic for every attendee?
Headset. Well, so to wrap this up, we do want to know where we should continue from this. We started a good dialogue. Do we want this to continue? And in conjunction with that, we need to hear some direction from City Council as to how they would like us to address this.
Brenda Gunter, the mayor. I certainly would like to see us take all the information provided tonight and all the comments provided tonight and take a look at how an ordinance might be rewritten. But before it goes to council, I think we need to make sure that we present the new ordinance, if you will, to the same kind of forum tonight so that it could have impact before it goes to council, so that when it goes to council, there's not so much debate and public comment at that time, which becomes very problematic in terms of trying to change it as we're trying to vote on it. So I would like to see us rewrite it based off of the public comment tonight, which I think they brought up a lot of great issues. And they have a need to do business. We want them to do business. We want them to be successful in business. And the simpler and easier we can make it, the better. So let's rewrite it, present it again, get some more comments. It might not make everybody happy, but if we can get 80% of the people agreeing on what the ordinance should look like and feel like for their businesses, then it can go to council. And I think that would make council feel better knowing that there was some good direction and input from the folks here tonight.
Good direction, thank you.
I want to go back to the fire suppression system with the fire marshal here. We have one. You know, we got to put it in. It's no big deal. It costs a little bit of money, but it's done. The question I have for you, though, is being in San Angelo, why does San Angelo require the food trucks to have it when the other cities that are bigger do not?
I don't know. That's a good question, and I am a fan of the Food Network, by the way. But I'll tell you that talking to some of my colleagues across the state, I've asked them about some of these things come up, and my colleagues are doing some of the same thing. I think that in the bigger communities, it's harder to hide, and so I think that you see a lot of these food trucks with limited staff trying to go look at them, and they can. That's the only reason why I can think of. But I know that in Bexar County, because I used to work there, we used to check for that very thing, and we would deny some of those vendors. And it's not a fun relationship, but we've done that. I know that's going on down there, and I know over in Travis County that's happening. I can't speak for Houston or the Dallas area. I know Longview does it. I know Tyler does it. I know Midland's doing it or starting to do it. And I know that El Paso's been doing that for a while. I'm not sure about Lubbock or Amarillo, but I do know about those things from our conversation. So we're not the only one. That is a basic safety standard. What we don't do to food trucks is we don't make you have a secondary exit. We don't make you cut in a door. Okay. So we don't make you sprinkler your food truck, okay? So there are some perks there for having a food truck that some of these restaurant owners have had to do because they have the brick and mortar facility. So that's one thing to keep in mind. But we do look at propane connections and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's funny, the Lone Star Cheeseburger guy, he had a food truck fire. So I think he appreciates the suppression system now. We had another one last summer. Yeah, he's burned up now. He wasn't taking care of his system. Okay, he didn't get the regular check from the licensed company to inspect it, and that was part of the issue and why he had a failure there. So I'll just kind of sell you a little safety thing right now. Make sure you have those things inspected by the contractors every 6 months. That is the one thing that has to be done every 6 months. And when we go visit the food trucks, that seems to be one of the recurring themes that we see when we do the inspections, is they haven't been getting the regular inspection on the hood system. And I do have a question. Why do we do that permit every 6 months? What is the purpose of the 6 month? Yeah. Chief? Okay, yeah, you know, while you're required to have that extinguishing system inspected by the licensed guy, you know, every 6 months, we're only going to inspect you once a year. So I didn't know why there was a 6 month on that, but.
It's the little green tag that everybody's talking about.
Okay. Okay. Anything else? All right.
I had one more question. Some cities in Texas have capped off the amount of food trucks in the city. Is San Angelo considering anything like that at all?
We're not considering anything. I mean, I wouldn't be a fan of that necessarily because I think competition's a good thing, but that has not been discussed in any meeting with me. Really, no rules have, because we really do want to hear from you tonight about what you want the rules to be. So I'm assuming that would be a no on that question. Yeah, okay.
Last call. Are you coming up to speak? Okay.
With me. Hi, my name is Desiree Johnson, and I'm a certified business advisor at the Small Business Development Center here in San Angelo. And just listening to the forum tonight, I just wanted to provide that we can also be a resource for you as small business owners. So as you're preparing to go and visit with the city or prior to calling and setting up a consultation, we can help you walk through some of those questions that they may ask, so that way you're better prepared for that consultation meeting, or maybe to help you avoid some of that ping pong. We do not know all of the policies and regulations, but we definitely do try to help you, as well as advising in other areas of your business. So if you are feeling like you could need some assistance, please feel free to reach out to us at the SBDC. So thank you.
Carl, can I say one more thing? One other thing I'd like to add is we often draft ordinances and then we take them to a forum and everybody stands up and they say, but have you seen what so-and-so city does? We like how they do it. So if you have a city, a lot of you guys have operated in other places. If you know of a city ordinance that you like, that you think operates well, feel free to send it to us. You can find all of our email addresses on our website. And we're happy to look at what other places do. We're going to do that anyway, and we're going to guess at what the best thing is. If you think you know what the best thing is, send it to us so we can already have a head start on that.
My name is Rebecca Guerra. I'm the planning manager. I work for that guy who keeps answering all the questions that you have. If you all haven't signed in before you leave, I urge you to please do so, because when he has us write stuff, everybody is writing stuff to fix this and to streamline this and make this better. We want to get this information out to you, but we can't if we don't know how to contact you. And we really want to get it to you because we really want to solicit your feedback. That's a big deal in my department, is to make sure that everybody's got the information and we get to hear from you, because you all do this every day. That's the first thing I want to say. The second thing is, if any of you want to ask any questions after this meeting, I'm going to be here. I work for the planning division. It's my folks that are one of the ping pongs that you go and you ask for zoning. So if you have any questions, I promise you, I will be here. I will answer you, and if I can't answer you tonight, I will give you my number so that you can call me, and I will get you an answer. All right? Thank you all.
And I was going to mention that too. On the city's website, you can find all us, Carl White at Parks and Recreation, John James, Teresa James, Sandra Villarreal. All our phone numbers are there, so just go to the city website. If you want to reach out to us individually. I do thank you for showing up, unless there's any other comments, taking the time to come out. We got some great comments tonight, and we got some good direction from the mayor on where we should go from this. And unless there's any other thoughts, we are adjourned. Thank you for coming.